start by acknowledging that we're here on the territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people who've been here from time immemorial. We are on their land. I say to them, Miigwech. I don't know how to say I'm sorry. And hi, hi. My name is Elizabeth May, and leader of the Green Party of Canada, and member of Parliament for Saanich Gulf Islands. As you all know, Wednesday mornings, parties are in their caucuses, so we're in ours. This is an explanation of how, and I've found this enormously helpful as a Green Party member of Parliament to work not just across party lines, but to extend the ability to work on legislation between the two different houses of our Parliament. As we speak in the House of Commons, we speak of the other place, which I think is deeply mysterious. But in that other place, I have a colleague and sister in Senator Marilou McPhedran. And so today we wanted to share some of our shared goals for the parliamentary session. So I'll turn it over to Senator McPhedran.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. This is probably a somewhat unusual media conference, but in some ways it demonstrates what we're trying to do, and that is to be parliamentarians that are not governed by political, or in the case of the Senate, by groups and leadership and top-down directions. I'm an unaffiliated senator, and that means that I don't belong to any of the groups in the Senate. This has been the case for a number of years. It also means that it allows for a kind of freedom that many of our colleagues really don't have. And that is what has led me time after time after time to be working directly with Elizabeth May because of our very strong shared values, both as parliamentarians and as feminists. I'm a co-founder and co-chair of the Canadian Association of Feminist Parliamentarians. Elizabeth has been an active member from the very beginning, and we are the ones who show up with the civility pledge, asking parliamentarians to make personal commitments to make sure that the culture in both houses of Parliament does not slide further into abusive and toxic behavior. We have a long way to go, but this is how culture changes. It changes by people stepping forward, people asking questions, people saying, no, this is not okay. And increasingly we are seeing that. We're seeing it being addressed at the cabinet level as well. This is an issue that is somewhat difficult to address because often this issue is led by women. There's a disproportionate amount of abuse that women politicians and women in public life, journalists in particular, have to live with. And in order to change a culture like Parliament, we have to be able to have shared values and shared actions. And so as the traditional political caucuses are meeting this morning, we're here to say that there's another way to bring about change, another way to be responsible parliamentarians.
So in that light, let me just pick up on a couple of those points. We have worked together to mention, as Senator McPhedran just said, we've worked together for years. Yes, and within the Feminist Caucus, we've also worked really hard to help in different ways, both of us, to help rescue women from the Taliban and help get women out of Afghanistan. We've also worked together on issues related to the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. We have attended numerous United Nations conferences of the parties to the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, TPNW. And at the last session at the United Nations headquarters, we were the only two Canadian parliamentarians at the gathering of international parliamentarians working for the TPNW. We've worked together on a range of issues for quite a while, but one that is our legislative agenda priority for this session is a bill that is before the Senate and and it's a bill that is really near and dear to my heart. I had sponsored the same bill in the House in previous sessions. It hasn't gotten through the House in the past. Our hope is that Senator McPhedran's bill will make it through the Senate, and then I will sponsor it through the House to get it to completion. This is a bill to engage youth more directly in Canadian politics by changing the voting age from 18 to 16. So I want Marilou to take over now to explain more about her bill in the Senate and how we see it as a priority for democracy.
I'm approaching 9 years as a senator, and my priority from the very beginning in every session of Parliament has been to introduce a bill to expand voting rights in Canada, to include 16 and 17-year-olds, and to allow 14 and 15-year-olds to register with Elections Canada to indicate their intention to vote at 16. I have a national youth advisory, and within that advisory, we have working groups that young leaders from across this country choose to work on together as volunteers. Expanding voting rights in Canada to include 16 and 17-year-olds is a top priority among these engaged young leaders. I have young people that work with me as interns, as aides, as research assistants, and many of them actually started with me when they were still in high school, and they're still working on this issue. A national campaign has been building. You can see it at just vote16.says.ca, and there's a whole listing of speeches and all the different ways in which this momentum is growing. The fact that we are about to begin the Senate next week, this will continue to be a priority of mine. And we have a number of new senators, relatively new senators this year. And I've been able to speak to a number of them about this initiative. And there are no guarantees in Parliament. There are no guarantees in terms of a bill. This one is S222 in making its way through the entire process. But my most immediate goal, and it is shared by many of my colleagues in the Senate, is to have a committee hearing, get through the second reading of the bill, and make it possible for young leaders from across Canada to demonstrate how awesome they are and how much sense it makes to expand voting rights in Canada, to include them.
I want to add and thank Marilou for doing something else that you haven't mentioned. For a couple of years in a row, Senator McPhedran has organized a youth congress around the issue of nuclear weapons and engaged young people that I've met first through your work here on the Hill, and then I find them again. There they are at the United Nations headquarters for the meetings of the parties to the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Young people have a tremendous weight. It's obviously trite, but very true, that young people have so much to contribute to the life of Canadian democracy. And we find that voter turnout is least among voters 18 to 25. A lot of the research shows that that's because if you don't vote at your first opportunity, you're unlikely to vote at your second or third. And as it happens, voting for the first time at 18, again, based on research, is that that's the time that a lot of young people find themselves away from home for the first time. I certainly have been on university campuses on a voting day and saying to young people, the polling station's just over there. Here's the information. I was like, the thing is, I don't really live here. I'm a student here. I said, but you have the right to vote here. It's a bit of a hurdle. And voting at 16 will increase the likelihood when people are grounded in their home community that they go vote. The other thing about it, of course, is that at 16, we do recognize that driving a car, that's a lethal weapon. And we trust that at 16, people have the maturity to get behind the wheel. At 16, have real jobs, hard jobs, pay taxes. The United Kingdom has made the decision that legal voting age is now 16. Vote 16, c'est un moment maintenant, c'est une priorité pour nous, mais aussi c'est une priorité pour la démocratie. Oui-même, il y a les jeunes partout au Canada. Ils travaillent fort en faveur de ce projet de loi. We know within the Green Party, where we have on our governing council young Greens. We engage because young people are an essential part of our democracy. This is an opportunity, and it's one that we must seize. And I'm hoping, as Senator McPhedran said, that when the committee hearings start, when we get through second reading in the Senate, that this bill will have the support of the senators. Obviously, none of if you want to work on this bill in the Senate, none of you are 16 as senators. None of you are even. I mean, the current Parliament of Canada on the House of Commons side has a lot more younger people. We have to get it through the Senate first, because we don't want the argument launched against us that this is duplicative. Senator McPhedran's bill S222 has priority, and I'm not introducing a private member's bill on vote 16 unless and until I'm taking carriage of that bill to get it across the finish line. I think those are all the words we need for introduction. Je suis disponible pour les questions en anglais ou en français. Je suis tellement fière d'être ici avec ma chère collègue et amie, et aussi un avocat comme moi aussi, féministe comme moi aussi, membre de l'Ordre du Canada. This is a rare caucus of feminists who are also in the Order of Canada. I think we welcome more. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much to you both. We don't have any reporters online or in the room, save for myself, so I'm going to ask some questions. I'm Stephanie Levis with the Globe and Mail. Just picking up on the feminist caucus, or I wonder, when Chrystia Freeland's decision to step back from caucus yesterday takes another woman out of Mr. Carney's inner circle, and I wonder if you could reflect on that a bit and what you're seeing. We don't necessarily need to parallel the Trudeau Liberals with this government, but it does seem like there's a marked difference when it comes to placing a priority on ensuring strong women around the table.
I will respond to that. I've already declared myself on a number of occasions in publications, in the press, actually beginning with the very first day of Prime Minister Carney being Prime Minister, and the fact that there was nobody in cabinet to look at women and gender equality. We're seeing a real pattern here with Prime Minister Carney, with the troika of white corporate men who are now at the peak of government. I think it's fair to say that it's not on the record yet, but we are hearing from women who are part of the government who are very concerned about this. We know that on issues of climate change, for example, this is a very common meeting ground for many, many women. It's also, to a large extent, young women all over the world who lead on addressing the climate crisis. And this is not a good look for this new government. It's in a context where the metrics around pay equity, around leadership in corporations, all of those metrics are bad in terms of women's participation. We barely have 30% of women in the House of Commons in this country. And so seeing this and the messaging that includes, by the way, the recent publication that although the request being made by Minister Champagne of all the different departments to cut it 15%, what is the projection for the Women and Gender Equality Department? 80%. 80%. They just released, because those cuts, the 15% cuts, are supposed to be in place by 27, 28. So but the report that was issued by Women and Gender Equality was that if you measure this current fiscal year through to 27, 28, they actually have 80% cuts in their plan.
I would just add that, and thank you, Sarah. The Canadian Federation of University Women have highlighted this as well. We're seeing clear trends. Women and gender equality funding is dropping clearly. In the Green Party submission to Minister Champagne for what is required, we focus very much on the wage questions of where is the funding? Is this no longer important? But again, the image of the inner circle, I mean, Marilou's already said it. It's not as if there aren't strong women in Mark Carney's cabinet. Anita Anand, is brilliant. Melanie Jolie is Julie DeBruzen is Minister of Environment, but I don't think she'll get the clout in cabinet that does someone like Kim Hodgson as Minister of Energy. I worry very much, and there are, in terms of the inner circle of who's running PMO, that's where you don't see the women.
And on a semi-related note, and now I'll go back to the previous Trudeau Liberal government. There was a time, of course, when the Prime Minister Trudeau styled himself as also the Minister for Youth. He had a youth secretariat I don't remember what it was called specifically, Youth Council. And it seems as though that too has evaporated under the Carney government. I'm wondering what your sense is of where that voice fits the Carney Liberals.
Again, for me, in terms of the youth advisors that I have and the young people across Canada that come forward to work with me on the Vote 16 campaign, on climate change, the majority are young women. And the messaging that's there, I mean, we were both at the book launch for Catherine McKenna's new book, Run Like a Girl. And in the book, finally, we get a very honest assessment of the kind of exclusionary experience that many women have. But of course, you have cabinet solidarity, you have Christy Freeland's another good example of making a decision, a choice that she wasn't going to accept unacceptable treatment. And that air of secrecy, that air of take one for the team, that don't be a whiner, don't talk about the kind of abuse that you're subjected to, that's part of the culture that we're challenging. And we're not alone. We're here together today, but by no means are we alone. And when we see so close to us the erosion of rights, the move not just to an autocracy, but we're seeing a fascist playbook. How can we possibly think that we are immune to that? And the indicators where you start to see a shifting of power, in no way am I saying this government is like the Trump government, but I'm very concerned about the indicators. I'm very concerned about who's not part of the decision making. I have enormous respect for the individuals who make up the troika of white corporate men around Prime Minister Carney. I know them, I respect them. That is still not acceptable. And that kind of exclusionary, if women are not there, if young voices are not there, if youth are not factored into key decision making, there's a squandering of our future. And that is a great concern.
I just want to pick up on that too, because when you're not in this era in which we are, we're on dangerous crossroads for liberal democracies around the world. We've talked about this in Canada a lot ever since Trump and his second term. We've been gathered together frequently under former Prime Minister Trudeau, all opposition leaders and Trudeau together to say, okay, we need some solidarity. We need Team Canada. And I've been very happy to embrace elbows up, but I add arms outstretched because I'm so fearful for so many Americans who are at risk right now. But events in the US, of course, affect our culture. So I'm very concerned about the peril in which Rachel Gilmore was placed by a thoughtless social media comment from a leading Canadian politician, I won't say. It's just appalling and dangerous, and we must protect and be clear that Canada is a different country. We are rooted in shared values of respect for democracy, human rights, and the voices of women and youth must not be silenced.
Thank you. I think that concludes our press conference for today. Have a
Thank
great
you
day.
very much. Merci beaucoup.